Welcome everybody to another episode of PropTech Talks, where we talk with industry executives, professionals, experts, entrepreneurs. We've got someone who's a little bit of all three right now. Dan, great to have you. Tell us who Dan Smith is.
Oh God. So I wear many different hats. My background is sports travel, gin, and then I fell into student accommodation back in 2015, so around 10 years ago or so. And I didn't even know that purpose-built student accommodation was a thing. I was just told to turn up for an interview at a location that happened to be Nido West Hampstead, Nido being a student accommodation operator. And that was for a sales and marketing director role. It was my job to fill the building, to understand the ops from the ground up, any resident queries and issues. That was all down to me. And I loved it. I was hooked pretty instantly. And then once you get into PBSA, you don't tend to sort of get out of it. And what I sort of found was that there was a bit of a power void. So very quickly, I ended up as managing director. And it was my job to raise capital with the team at Roundhill Capital. So we raised from the likes of Starwood, KKR, TPG, various others too. But I had to build out the operational platform at Nido as well. So look at the systems, look at the staffing and the structure, and honestly, make it all up as I go along. Because, the focus from the Roundhill team, who own Nido, there was go and raise capital, keep the capital happy. And my focus was build out that operating platform. So we went from 4 to 120 people over the course of about 18 months. And that was my job to oversee that across Europe. So that was 1 to 14 properties. But I've never been, before then, I was never a real estate person. I was never a finance person. And all of a sudden, this world was kind of opened up to me.
What year was that?
That was 2015 when I first started.
10 years ago, okay.
Yeah. And then beyond that, I worked for marketplaces, bringing students into the UK and placing them in student accommodation. That was back in sort of 2019, 2020. And then COVID hit. And obviously, international students stopped traveling. And my employer at the time stopped paying. And as everyone has a mortgage, I decided to set up as a consultant there and then. I'd always been asked about consultancy and couldn't do it because I was always employed. So I just decided, right, let's give this a go. And it was more out of necessity. And that was student housing consultancy, which has now morphed into RESI Consultancy. And we started working alongside investors, operators, developers, universities, helping them to fill their buildings and run them efficiently. People then started asking, can you do tech reviews and property management system reviews and things like that? So we did quite a few major reviews, having understood it. I built up the team there through a network of consultants. And yeah, I was running that, enjoying growing that. And then I was doing a systems review for quite a large student accommodation operator, looking at all the property management systems and CRMs that were out there. And so I just put out there on LinkedIn, is there anything good in AI right now? And this was about 18 months ago or so. And no one came to me with anything, absolutely nothing. There was a couple of things in the States, but obviously not available over here. And then I did that again about a year ago, and I got a message from Shantan Biswas. Now, he is the founder of Uniaco, and Uniaco brings in around 15,000 students a year and places them into their student accommodation, puts students into university as well, does their applications. And what he'd done was scale that marketplace to about sort of 300 or so people based in an office in Mumbai. And he wanted to scale it and grow it even further, having taken on investment, but he couldn't do that without doubling the size of the team. So instead of doing that, he really heavily invested in AI and tech and built VerbaFlo as it is now as a system and effectively sandboxed it within Uniaco. Then middle of last year, in the latest fundraising round for Uniaco, he exited that completely and he spun out VerbaFlo as an AI platform to then deliver results for PBSA operators in particular, but also just general real estate as well. And he messaged me and said, I've got a demo for you. Let me do a call and I'll showcase, our sales agent that is effectively AI. And I got the demo, could not believe it. And genuinely, because I knew it was AI, obviously, but it was so conversational. The latency was incredible. It was really quick, very conversational, and I just knew there and then that was going to be the future of operational real estate, because I can see all of the pain points that all of these operators have, whether it's BTR, co-living, PBSA, universities, and I know that VerbaFlo in particular can solve them. So I jumped in with both feet. I sort of said, listen, I want in quite a big way. Let's make this work. I'll oversee the business development and take this to market. Let's look at a different approach than hiring your traditional, slightly overzealous sales team, which we've seen before in the PBSA sector and BTR in particular. And let's really focus on delivering and not overpromise and underdeliver. Let's get the product right. I know the operations, so does the rest of the team. And that's what we started building. And we've been taking that to market ever since.
Really, I think a really interesting thing to focus here is what a lot of the, let's say, newer prop techs would be thinking about. Also, I think a lot of the PBSA operators who, still want to be filling dorm rooms.
Mm-hmm.
It's sales. It's actually making that happen. And, many people will say sales is sales. Just try to get something with value. Sales is sales. But actually, I think there's probably a little bit more nuance, and this is a really interesting thing here. How does, now that you're actually within the tech sphere, from the tech side, how does that differ from, typical sales that you'd be looking at, or even from the real estate side? How do the two differ? And even from RESI Consultancy as well, which should be quite interesting.
So the focus of any operator in real estate at the moment right now is filling beds, keeping those residents happy, and ensuring that you're running as lean as you possibly can, both at a site level and also at at an HQ business level, because management fees that these operators are getting are pretty low, and it's been quite tough out there. It's tough for occupancy across the board. There's occupancy challenges in BTR, especially when mobilizing. And the agents love to call this indigestion, but actually it's more BTR kind of finding its feet. Same with co-living as well. That's a nascent industry. And dealing with the legacy of the collective, I think, to be completely honest. So I think there's a lot to run out there. And then PBSA has found it incredibly difficult to build affordable, as BTR has too. And I think that has meant that there's an affordability crisis. So we don't have a supply crisis, as some of the agents might want you to think, but we have an affordability crisis. And so that the sales point for PBSA, BTR, etc., it does come down very much to affordability, location, all of those key drivers that you'd normally expect. And what VerbaFlo is allowing people to do is to make sure that they can streamline their structure and their systems. And so all of these operators that we work with, we're able to go in and say, right, we know your pain points. We know that actually it's tougher to fill your beds than it ever has been. And so you still have to have that focus on sales. We're very aware of that. But do you want to hire up a seasonal sales team of 50 people that you have to pay a recruiter for? You have to do the training. You have to buy their systems licenses. Then you have to pay them. Or do you want to deploy AI? And that's, again, where VerbaFlo can come in and say, the way we're selling this in at the moment is pretty delicately, because what we don't want to do is go into, let's say, a student accommodation operator and say, you don't need your sales team anymore, or you don't need your admin team doing all of your debt chasing or whatever it might be, because they would run a mile. And so we have to do the consultative selling approach.
Do they though?
They don't. I think this is the thing, we're selling it in initially, and this is obviously very, very much an open playbook, but we're selling it in talking about not needing to hire up seasonal staff. You think of, some of our clients, one of the biggest accommodation operators for co-living and student accommodation may hire 100 people during peak season in August and September to deal with that demand from students going through clearing or whatever else it might be. Mm-hmm. They just don't need to do that anymore. And another client had 3 people that they would hire to chase first installments and deal with debt repayments and payment plans and things like that. Again, that can all be automated by VerbaFlo. So we tend to go in there and talk about the lack of the fact that you don't need seasonal staff. But there is a really uncomfortable truth coming, because it will eventually, AI will be at that point where you can showcase the savings, you can showcase the efficiencies, and all of these teams will start to reconfigure and restructure what their businesses look like. And we're already seeing that. We're seeing the fact that there's less seasonal hiring. Our clients that have had VerbaFlo from February onwards, which is when we really launched, February this year, they've been able to not hire up remotely as many people, deploy VerbaFlo and say, we will be effectively the contact center. And long term, yes, there will be a focus from those clients on making sure that you still keep the resident satisfaction and you're converting at as high a rate as you possibly can in terms of the sales and selling those beds, but that you've done that on the most streamlined way possible so that all of your communications are automated. And that's, if I give the very quick sales pitch, that's what VerbaFlo does. It is an AI communications operating system. So it is effectively your replacement contact center. It will unify all of your communications across WhatsApp, phone, email, and web chat as well. We've got WeChat launching soon. We're obviously looking at various other communication platforms too. And it will do that for multiple different use cases. So it's one platform to rule them all, as we were. But we integrate with PMS, with your CRM, as it were. And what we're also finding is that some of our clients are coming to us now and saying, great, we can see that you can streamline our structure. What about our systems? And so that's sort of the next step as well. But again, we don't want to scare anyone by saying, look, we can replace your CRM or anything like that.
Shake my hand right now, you're a billionaire.
But I think that's it. We don't charge per license or per head. Once you deploy VerbaFlo based on the number of beds you've got, that's it. You can have as many people as you want. And that's really attractive for anyone who's got a CRM that they're paying for on a per license basis and having to scale that up and down depending on how many staff they have at any given time. It's a really painful process. So we integrate with the PMS. We will continue to always do that. We're not looking to, to encroach on that area.
Makes sense.
Because they're so embedded.
And that also is so fundamental to a building system and to portfolio. But it's actually what you do with that data where the value is, right? So no, that makes sense. 2 interesting points I want to touch on, and I think it's 2 points when what you've been saying, where you've proved economists completely wrong on 2 things, completely wrong. The first is the idea that I think about a year ago people were saying, well, the sales jobs will be okay. A lot of the analyst stuff will be tough, but the sales jobs, that's where AI, you can never get in the way of that. And actually, it then sort of exposes what, I guess, where the value is in a conversation from a renter, right?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. The second is it was the notion that as quantitative easing goes away, as interest rates go up, as there's less money in the system, the last thing that any, let's say, real estate or any incumbent, it doesn't even have to be in real estate, but in any incumbent industry, the last thing they're going to start spending money on now is technology. And that was also completely the complete reverse. In fact, now it's okay, now we need to find margins. Now, if we look at the next 12 months, they're thinking about that seasonal hiring phase, they think about that huge cost bubble that's going to be coming. That they need to all of a sudden become extremely disciplined and extremely efficient. That's just what businesses are needing to do now. And I think the real estate industry likes to think it's very unique in a way, and as though it's some sort of soul, I don't know, its issues are unique, but really it's, it's across the board. on those two things, do you think now the timing for starting VerbaFlo is, well, it was the right time in that it will have a great effect on the industry? And then and the next question from that is, what will the effect be on the industry and people? How is that actually going to look?
Yeah, this is just us two talking, right? So yeah, it's I disagree with what quite a lot of the noises around AI, where people aren't really particularly concerned about what it's going to do for various different industries, real estate as well. And you can link it back to university as well. I think we're actually seeing decision paralysis from students and postgrads in particular, because they have no idea what their jobs are going to look like in an era of AI, because they'll start. Imagine you want to do a law degree. Would you really want to do that? What's your job going to look like at the end of it? Are there going to be more roles? And the likelihood is there will be roles which are the entry-level roles using AI. It's not necessarily that it's going to totally replace it and that we're going to see this massive cliff of drop-offs of employment for graduates of law degrees. That's, one example. But I think it's such an unknown. I'm an optimist by nature, but I've seen the guts of this industry and I've seen the potential of AI. I've seen what it's going to look like in probably 3 to 5 years. And I think that every single industry will see a large impact within 5 years, because depending on the speed of the change within the industry, real estate, I think, is quite slow moving when it comes to tech in particular. There's loads of legacy systems. Some are just being loaded onto the cloud. And I think that's where we're going to get an awful shock when some operators that are deploying AI effectively they are definitely going to become those industry leaders. And I think that within real estate at the moment, the operators with the most potential are those without the legacy of systems and structure. And I think there'll be some seriously agile players that come along. And I think when I look at some of the...
Not the first time it's happened either. In the .com era,
exactly.
Some businesses went down, new businesses came out, even new incumbent businesses really capitalized on it. It's a sort of a natural way of, innovation, I suppose, across an industry.
It is, but it's I speak to a lot of the PMS guys and girls, and they basically are saying, well, look, real estate is so slow moving that we aren't particularly worried. And we're sort of there as a partner for each of these PMS and saying, like, yeah, but guys, like, this is changing at light speed now. And you've got the Industrial Revolution, the .com, and the birth of the internet, and then you've got the advent of AI. And I think the most transformative will probably be the advent of AI. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that we're going to need to move to some kind of universal basic income or anything like that, but there are going to be, would I go into law? No, I definitely wouldn't. Would I go into graphic design? Absolutely not. I've just done some graphic design work myself, just sat on a laptop in your nice office. And I would never...
Did it faster and saved 15 grand?
Genuinely, I think that's it. And then you look at, what does that look like for real estate HQ teams? Well, it looks like a sales director overseeing multiple AI agents who are selling across multiple different channels, 24/7 in 180 languages. And that's just VerbaFlo. And then you've got your finance team collecting debt. Well, do you really need an entire team of finance accountants and admin assistants and accounts payable or anything like that, when you can just automate all of those? And it goes right the way through to maintenance. And I think one thing with real estate we have to be really careful of is that there are a lot of savings that can be made at HQ. And what we need to focus on is that we have to have that sense of community that we're building on site, in the bricks and mortar, in the property. So there's only so far you can go. Yes, you may be able to streamline slightly, but we need to make sure that we don't go too far one way. And I think, yes, residents are going to want that sense of community. They're going to want convenience. They're going to want, immediate contact in their language or and their channel. but you cannot lose that human touch when you're actually on the ground in the building. So there has to be that balance of saying, right, we've got this brilliant system that we can deploy at HQ that will streamline the work we do because it will streamline our tech stack and our staffing, but that on the site, at site level, we are careful not to jeopardize the community that we're curating effectively. So that's a really fine balance that any operator is going to have to tread.
And I think there is this, there's almost this line that some companies hide behind a little bit, which is, well, real estate's so big and so fundamental to our lives that, well, it's just slow moving then. So, so we don't really have to act now. And have you been to the past 3 PropTech Connects?
Yes.
All 3?
No, the last 2, yeah.
Even the last 2. Did you see the difference in the amount of people?
Yeah.
It's moving a lot faster than people who don't know about it think.
Yeah.
And the people who do go, they think, I didn't realize how big this was. And, when they hear you, and you can very much see, with some speakers who've been doing this for the past number of years, there's usually a shock to a lot of people in early September.
Yeah.
And I think that level of shock will increase. I think that, the margins in real estate and the growth within real estate is no longer just going to come down to everyone just, I don't know, things just growing because of the economy. I think it's going to come down to problem solving. Yeah. And it's going to come down to finding margins as the way to increase the values of these businesses. So interesting time we're in. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about the PBSA sector and its relationship with VerbaFlo. And that's also, I guess, a proxy for how well you guys are doing. I don't know if you can say the number, about 20% of the UK's PBSA, if I'm not mistaken, is now powered by VerbaFlo.
Yep.
How did you guys, what was the key to doing that? And what's the effect of that been so far? And what's that going to be looking like over the next couple of years then?
So,
and that was in what time frame as well? 12 months?
That is 9 months.
9 months.
Yeah. So we've onboarded 170,000 PBSA and BTR beds across the UK, and we're now into Europe. It is, and I think the reason that we've done that is twofold, and I'll give myself a little bit of credit in that, because we made a very conscious decision very early on not to hire a big sales team. As I've said, we saw the issues that some PMS operators, PMS systems had going to market, delivering on that customer satisfaction beyond having a great sales team. So what we did was decide to sell from within. Now, my profile, such as it is, which I still hate saying it, but as a consultant to the industry, working with multiple different clients, and I have a stable of investor and operator clients, and housed podcast and the mouthing off that I tend to do on LinkedIn. It's just given me a platform to sell from within and to use my network and contacts to open the doors to a very capable customer success team. So I'm able to get in there, open the doors as necessary, do the demos, and then make sure that they're hooked on the system straight away. And that's the great thing. I can take it so far, then the system really has to talk for itself, and it literally does. And that wasn't a deliberate cheesy line there, but the feedback we've had is staggering. And it was after that first demo, taking it to a good friend of mine in the market and saying, I need your honest opinion. I think I know what I feel about this because it's incredible. What do you think? And yeah, those first 3 demos, they literally signed up on the spot. And we gave them a month's free pilot, to be fair. But it was a no-brainer for them. And so that's a very different approach to what we're used to. We haven't gone all out and been platinum sponsors everywhere. And obviously we were.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we haven't had a call from you guys just yet, but we are already thinking, like, what does this look like as the next phase? Because yes, I can really open a lot of doors in PBSA and BTR, And luckily, because of the work that I've done with marketplaces, I can do that on a global level. So I've previously, for a marketplace, onboarded about 500,000 beds in the US. So next week, then I'll be off to
Bloody hell.
I'll be off to LeaseCon to try and start the process there, and that's going to be a different sell-in, because there's one incumbent AI comms platform, and luckily I know that VerbaFlo performs better, and we've seen various iterations of it, and but my contacts there are slightly more limited, so we have to be mindful of the fact that maybe we will take a bit more of a sort of coordinated approach with a bit more of a team out there. But equally, I've got an equivalent in Australia, in the US, in various other places from my work in RESI Consultancy that I know that I can call upon to say, I've got this incredible product. Do you want to help to sell it in to providers? And it's the benefit for, I've put a lot of my reputation on the line here. I need it to work because, I'm backing it to the hilt. And in that sense, I've gone all in as a co-founder, and I'm definitely riding on the coattails of the founding team, as it were. But I think there's definite opportunity over the course of the next couple of years to continue that focus on consultative selling, doing a lot more thought leadership, being really open and honest about what's actually happening in the sector. You won't get many people saying, well, actually, this could upend the majority of jobs in real estate, and operational real estate in particular. And I am not scaremongering. I'm not trying to create too much FOMO here. The system speaks for itself, and that's why we get such a high success rate after a demo.
And if the first, silk machinery said this is going to remove sewers, I mean, jobs change, the value changes. That's how economies grow. So it's fair enough. So I guess we're just in another iteration of that.
Exactly that. And our next step is thinking, right, let's really go out for Europe. Let's go to the US. Let's look at, other locations too that are going to need this. And that's, we've managed to capture 20% of the PBSA industry in the UK. So I'll say that again. We've managed to capture 20% of the PBSA industry in the UK. And that is quite a staggering number. So 170,000 beds, but then we've got some great BTR players in there. The likes of Moda, for example, Verve Life, and, numerous others too that are coming on board and starting to say, listen, this isn't just PBSA you're in, this is now BTR, this is also co-living. We're in Europe as well with Milestone, which is, a lot of beds, and then Vita and various others too. So it's now thinking, how's that global rollout going to look? Do I need a larger sales team? Do I really need to turn this into a BD function? No, I still think that the approach that I'm taking is more applicable because it's more relevant. It's focused on my understanding of operations across all sectors and how I know they'd like to be sold to. No one wants a cold call from a sales team that is only selling one thing. So I will typically meet someone for a coffee or a lunch or whatever it might be. We'll talk about the market. We'll talk about where they're up to, because I've got that industry understanding, and I've made sure that the team have that as well, and that it's incorporated into the system. And then we'll talk about, doing the demo and going from there. So it's really making sure that it's consultative selling. It's not rocket science. Mm-hmm. It's just how I wanted to be sold to. And all I would get was just the constant bombardment from the various different property management and CRM systems
as well. You want to be talking to someone when they actually want to be talking to you as well.
Yeah,
it makes a difference. But one thing I think is really interesting is actually the difference between the US, the UK, and Europe. What are the attitudes of the clients like? What's the readiness like? I don't know if you're also looking at the Middle East it's just night and day difference for us looking at it.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing with the people you're speaking to?
Well, it's fascinating because in the UK, we were first movers in this space. In the AI communications operating system space, there was just no one nailing it. Now, I actually, there was a competitor who tried to demo to me when I hadn't even heard of VerbaFlo, and it instantly broke. And so I was like, well, I couldn't back anything like that. I need something where it is legitimate, it is going to work. And so when VerbaFlo came along, and it wasn't just this voice AI, it was this whole system and this sort of AI CRM behind it as well, this AI operating system, it just felt very obvious that we were going to be able to take this to market because I hadn't heard or seen of anything like it. What I wanted to make sure of is that we have the PMS on board with it as well, and that they know that we need to integrate with them, and we want to integrate with them because we aren't, like I said, we aren't going to become this fully fledged PMS or anything like that. Mm-hmm. We need those overarching PMS systems, and we'll plug into it. And so I was able to, as I said, sort of take that to market, knowing that there was nothing else out there like it, and that we were going to be light years ahead of everything else, probably for the next, year to 18 months. And so it's been not always an easy sell, because it's changing hearts and minds and making people realize that we'll plug into the systems that they've got, and that's not a problem. And we'll automate it. We've got the tech team behind it to do the onboarding really super quick. And so it's been more of an open door in the UK. Yes, still quite slow moving to a certain extent. And so
you've only been around for 9 months.
Well, this is true, but I'm incredibly impatient, and I find it so frustrating when I'll talk to I'll typically start the conversation at C-level and speak to CEOs of various different operators or investors, and it will get passed down to maybe a head of IT, maybe someone in ops, maybe sales and marketing, and they'll be trying to guard their teams to a certain extent, or it might not necessarily sit with the right person. And I'm there saying, listen, I can save you money, I can save you time, I can fill your beds. It feels like an obvious sell to me. Yeah. And it's just a bit more slow moving. So the UK, we were first movers. In the US, as I said, there's already sort of an incumbent system, and so it's our job to go and displace them and showcase that we can offer better value for money, and that we've actually got a better system with more agile agentic AIs, and you can create your own use cases really simply and easily, rather than having these specific regimented, here's your maintenance, here's your sales, here's your debt chasing or whatever. We've got 40 different use cases for real estate. So that's going to be super interesting, going to the US and trying to say, look, we know you've heard of this other company, or you may be using them. Have a look at us, because we'll save you a lot of money and we've got a better system. And then the rest of the world, effectively, as if I can be so arrogant as to say you've got the UK, US, and rest of the world, is again very nascent. I think there aren't that many AI platforms doing what we do that are outside of the US. So it's our job to capture that market as quick as we can. So Europe, for me, is the next frontier. We're dipping our toe into the US to sort of test it, and I think Europe's the next frontier for us. But, having said it's the UK, US, and rest of the world, every single market is totally unique. And we have to, we've seen the PMS providers fall foul of that, really struggle to break into Europe as a market. And what we need to do is break that down into Spain, Portugal, Germany, wherever else. And I think that is that's our next focus, to say, right, so we're going to need to sell in this language. Okay, who's going to do that? And how's that going to, how are we going to make sure that actually does sort of work for them in terms of the way we sell to them, but the product working for them too. So much work going on with quality control and the engineering side of things. And so we're making sure that we've got the product right for each market, and then I'll look to sell that in either, through various different contacts, or by starting to think more traditionally about, the business development and the events sponsorship and the speaker slots and the various things.
Yeah. But I'm curious, have you noticed a difference in appetite? And I suppose outside of, there being potentially a competitor in the US, and I know maybe it's a bit tricky to actually see what part is the, I guess, would there be pushback due to a competitor or even the attitude? But even just for maybe any of the prop techs listening or people who are scaling at the moment, who are thinking about different markets, how would you, looking at how the UK might respond to a product, Europe might respond to a product, the US, have you noticed a difference in maybe where opportunity is, or how to even approach these different markets? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so like I said, we're in the UK, it felt like we were pushing a bit of an open door because everyone's been willing us on. And
you think that's unique? Do you think that's a VerbaFlo unique thing, or is there just a little bit more appetite for margin and data and improved process in the UK?
yeah, I think we're so mature as a market in BTR, in PBSA in particular, that we're coming down to some marginal gains here. And the returns are still good, the fundamentals are still good, but depending on how long you want to hold for, ultimately, gone are the days where you can rely on buying a PBSA, flipping it in 2 years to a KKR or IQ or whoever.
Yeah.
And making the stellar returns of old. I think,
and that's, I guess, like low interest rate pre-COVID strategy.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's slightly more volatile in terms of demand. That build it and they will come mentality has gone, and so I think that we need to now be focused on those efficiencies, and that's where VerbaFlo comes in. It can help to fill beds. It can help to drive efficiencies in operating costs. And if you're a third-party operator in particular, but also relevant for the owner-operators too, but a third-party operator will have a management fee that is, I'll be really clear to any investors out there, it's pretty low. And so they're going to be thinking, right, we've got a load of HQ costs. How can we pile it all down to the property level? And how can we save as much money as possible? Do we need all these people in our central sales team that we're not then giving, that is coming out of the management fee? Do we need all these people in finance or ops or whatever?
The guy who's been on the sort of the lower end each month is probably shaking a little bit listening to you right now.
I
figure I got to make some calls.
but no, in all seriousness, yes, like that is what it's going to come down to. I'm again not here to be a doom monger or say everyone's going to lose their jobs. Far from it. But I think there are some roles, and in particular, customer service, junior sales roles, etc., where those roles will change so much that operators in particular will consider: do I need a large sales team? Do I need a large finance team? Can I deploy AI in a way that will drive efficiency for not just the company, but also the resident that we're looking after as well, whether that's a student, a young professional, or even through to later living. And so the benefits are, for the residents, that they get instant answers in their own language, that they might have to search through a website for example, and it's all totally tailored to them, from the tone of voice to the accent used to the age of the agentic AI or the types of responses. It's all totally tailored because it's pulling from one knowledge base and then putting it into the operator's tone of voice. So
that's
residents are happy. They've got a personalized service that's instant on the channels that they want. They don't have to log into another resident app and log a maintenance complaint. They can just literally go onto WhatsApp or make a phone call, and it all gets logged against their account and a ticket gets raised. So one of our clients is able to jettison their ticket management system and their CRM because they're using VerbaFlo. And then when it comes to that sort of that site level staffing, we don't see that there's a huge efficiency there. Most of the efficiencies will be at that at HQ level. So across finance, sales, maintenance, operations. I think it's a case of selling it in gently, showcasing what it can do, making sure that it's right for the operator to then rebuild their systems and their structure, because that's what we're allowing them to do. And letting them do that in a careful and considered way so that they're not doubling up on costs by putting VerbaFlo in and then having a sales team there as well. We're making sure that we do that because we have a land and expand model, and that helps us from a revenue. It means there's a lag on our revenue realization because we might start by selling in a web chat, which deals with all of your inbound communication on your website, whether it's from an existing resident, which is a pain because it takes up valuable sales resource if you've got someone sort of manning your live chat. And so we might start with that use case and the lead acquisition use case as well. So it can be a new potential tenant logging onto your website, chat will pop up. That will then be VerbaFlo and will be the AI that's effectively tailored to the operator. Then once we've launched that with them for obviously a set price, we then say, right, well, we can roll this out into multiple different channels, multiple different use cases as well, 40 different use cases, like I said, from
Interesting.
debt chasing to upselling to, payment plans, rebooking campaigns, renewal campaigns, whatever it might be. There's numerous other use cases, and we can do that across multiple channels. And it's not like we're trying to get people hooked on a live chat that, really works. It's that we go in there making sure that their eyes are wide open to the fact that you can start with this. It's a really good sort of gateway to, to start thinking about what AI can actually do for your business. Then we'll broaden it out, and we'll be really clear on the pricing. We're totally open on the pricing and the way that we pitch it. And it just means that they're totally in control of it.
Would that be your advice to, to companies that are looking to get significant market share? Is it make it painless to start working with a customer? And a lot of the growth should come from the value you're adding and being able to add more value.
Yeah.
Or because even 20% of the market, a lot of pitch decks that go to VC says, if we get 20% of the market, this is how we'll look. So I was even going to ask, where does the growth actually look? Is it continuing the customer acquisition campaign? Is it growing and adding more value to the customers? What's the strategy there? And how would that tie into your advice to prop techs that are looking to grow in whatever subsector they're going for?
Well, opening the business development playbook, that land and expand model is pivotal to what we've built so far, because it helps us test as we go and make sure that the client instantly realizes, okay, I see the potential here. We're very satisfied with how that's worked. What's the next step? And they're coming to us and saying, what's the next thing? Again, I've seen from the way that, CRMs and PMS companies will approach things is that we're that one solution, is what they're saying. Like, we can do absolutely everything for you, just totally change your systems and your structure and your processes and, put this in place. It will do your finance, it will do your property management, it can do your FM, it can do your sales and your booking journey. And that's really scary. And that's a really small timescale and a really small market for that, who are willing to say, yes, we'll do that. We'll totally transform our systems. And a lot of these systems are interchangeable. They're kind of much of a muchness. I've done so many PMS reviews that I can see that there's so many similarities there. And it comes down to that sort of customer service side of things. If you try and sell me an entire platform, which encompasses absolutely everything, I would run a mile. And most operators would at all levels, from an IT director, CEO, whatever. I can count on one hand the amount that are actually actively looking at changing their property management system. But every single other company, every single operator out there would be interested if you came to them with a proposal that was actually genuinely going to work. And I think that's where VerbaFlo has been really easy for me to say, right, we'll just start small. We could even start in one language if you want. If you're mostly focused on UK domestic students, then we'll just start in one language. But I mean, it's very easy for us to turn on 180 languages. So, why would you do that? But in the very early days, we sold that in. And that's still the sales tactic now, to make sure that we can open the door. And, and we've gone from having, or not having to offer free pilots, but from offering free pilots to now saying, right, we've created that demand, we've got the buzz, everybody knows that this system works, because people aren't shy to share the fact that they're working with VerbaFlo, because of the fact that it really works. It makes you look like you're innovative if you're an operator, talking to your investors, talking to other operators. And I think that's kind of key. So it's really got the buzz around it, but selling in gently, showcasing the success, and then building from there is great. Our churn from anyone that signed a contract, we have zero churn. 170,000 beds are all continuing to use it because we have that customer success team in place, so many quality control analysts. And that's the painful thing. This isn't just an engineering team that we have. It is, the quality side of things, the quality assurance is such a big department now that we need to make sure that we're working hand in glove with every single operator to deliver for them. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a big beast behind what is quite a small start typically, and the lag time for really realizing that revenue, I suppose, and the full monthly recurring revenue is quite it's probably around 9 months, I would say. Some of our clients have started very early on, just with that initial live chat. 9-10 months later, they're only just getting around to the fact that, let's roll it out across everything. All the use cases,
Which
want
makes
everything.
you a VC's target, because if you're a business lander, but, obviously businesses need fuel, that's the venture capital game. So that does make sense. Really, really cool. One question I'm sure maybe a few people are wondering. AI had this huge hype. Okay, it's basically going to be Skynet Terminator, right? And then we came sort of to a realization. Do you think it's potentially tipping the other way? Of course, people banned AI as a generalization to, basically 4 companies: NVIDIA, Oracle, Meta, and those guys. Have you noticed a difference in your conversation in terms of the excitement towards AI? And even if you remember, actually, that was a point this year less so, but a year ago, most of the exhibitions within the industry, if you're a tech company, you really want AI shown there. Otherwise, it's like you're not future-proofing somebody's processes. It felt like. Has this shifted a little bit? What do you think is happening there?
So we are not getting carried away with pie-in-the-sky AI valuations. So we have a real-world application that is delivering results. And so we're making sure that we are really focused on delivering for each of our clients. We're aware through various different conversations that we are in a very desirable sector, because it's the practicalities of it. This isn't a theory or, what could come. We're delivering on monthly recurring revenue, and that is very attractive for any VC. And like you said, showing that with a land and expand mentality, we'll keep eking out more and more revenue from each client, but only when they're ready and they want it. So I know that there's a lot of hype. People talking about, the AI bubble's about to burst. So, what are you going to do? I think it's limited to, yes, like you said, NVIDIA and the Oracles and the OpenAIs, etc.
I think people conflate a small number of companies versus just agents in specific niches.
I completely agree. And so, no, I'm not concerned about any kind of AI bubble or anything like that, because we see it delivering. We know that we've got our pricing right. We know that we have a team that can really nail it for each of our clients. And it's a real world practical use case. And I think that's what, you may get some, during investment talks, you may get some valuations that get a bit carried away. I've seen it all.
OpenAI's hype has nothing to do with the fact that you might be spending too much on a sales team in the summer.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. It's translating, what's the actual need for what you're doing. And there is a massive need for what VerbaFlo is offering. And I think that's where we are very comfortable talking about that. We are very comfortable, whether that be to investors or whether that be to our clients who are like, but what if this happens? We have plenty of runway. We are, doing incredibly well, and we're looking for global dominance.
That's good. What would your advice be to an executive who is listening, knows that they potentially now need to get ahead? The margins have been suffering. It hasn't been just build it and it'll be filled with a gazillion students. They need to, start looking at sort of the inner workings of their business a bit more seriously. But it's a new concept for a lot of these guys and gals. What would your advice and approach be there?
So my approach is that I try not to scare people, like I said, by going in and saying, this is going to jettison your teams, or this is going to totally screw up your systems architecture, and you can rip up the rule book. We sell in relatively gently. It is that consultative approach that we tend to take, but we are very transparent and we're very honest about how we approach it. And so yes, the real estate industry from a residential perspective is going to look very different operating it in 3 to 5 years time than it does now. The entire prop tech and architecture and those systems architectures will have totally changed. And I would say AI will be underpinning the majority of it. And VerbaFlo will form a very big part of that, but still working with those systems.
And even outside of you guys, what would your advice be to an executive who is thinking about, embarking on this technology journey for the first time?
Oh, okay. So if it's sort of more of a independent advice question, I think you have to go into it realizing that you don't know everything. I still absolutely don't know everything there is to know. I don't know I don't have a crystal ball in terms of, the future gazing side of things. I can see the direction of travel. I can see the results from clients, but you have to go into it knowing that you just don't know everything.
Right.
Everything you thought you knew is out the window. And so all of it is up for grabs. But you can just dip your toe into certain things at certain times. If you're not quite ready to fully deploy AI or fully, rewrite the way your systems architecture is, then that's that's fine. You can, dip your toe in, start small, one use case, and then build up from there. But I think it's quite rare to get anyone who's prepared to do that and prepared to say, yeah, look, I'm an IT director. I know systems. I know software. I know hardware. I can buy laptops. I can buy software licenses. I can make sure that the security is up to scratch. But if you're a head of IT, you're not a head of AI. That's a very different thing. And I think that's where there's a huge knowledge gap. And if you're going into this journey of investigating AI within your company, you have to be aware that it is not a head of IT's job to completely understand AI and how it can be deployed in your system. I think that's where, and it's the same with sales, ops, marketing. It's your job, if you're a CEO, for example, to make sure that you're allowing everyone to educate themselves on what's out there and what the future direction of travel could be. But that is changing so fast that I think you just have to hold your hands up at this point and say, I'd love to know what's coming because this is what we're used to. We've just moved to the cloud and, we've got these systems that we're plugging all in and we're paying for 20 different systems licenses, etc. And all of that could just be totally thrown out the window very, very quickly. And so pace of change will be rapid. You'll see the benefits very early on, whether it's us or whether it's, any other sort of AI deployment within your company. You should be able to see a difference very quickly. The first year, we look at seasonal staff changing, not having to do that. The second year, I think there will be, more structural changes within certain businesses. And then, beyond that, I think within year 3, in 3 years' time, I think everybody will have realized the benefits and you will either have been left behind or you'll have been one of the first movers, or potentially you'll have started from scratch without the legacy of systems and structure and staffing, as I said before, and you'll be able to really come to the fore as an industry leader, whether that's PBSA, BTR or anything else, because you're not held back by some of the systems where people are clinging on to either managing large teams, which I get. When I was a sales director, I wanted a big team. Right now, I wouldn't want that because I would know that I'd have to manage that from an HR perspective with AI being deployed into these businesses and that the efficiencies that AI showcases, that just doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's go into it with open eyes and know, hold your hands up and say, look, I'm new to all of this.
It's interesting when you, if you go to any, agent or an owner or an operator, and you say, well, where is your growth going to come from? Are you going to charge more to your renters? They go, no, not anymore. We can't do that anymore.
No.
Yeah, okay. Well, are you just going to get loads more? They say, well, maybe in 2014, yeah. So where's it going to come from? And there's sort of this, we've got to grab the thistle bush moment, and this is what we need to do. And they need to go through this uncomfortable kind of venturing into the unknown, but that's actually where the next sort of phase of margin will come from and the growth in their business for the next. That's where actually a lot of it would be predicated on, and future-proofing these businesses, in thinking about how to do that, because things do move quickly. So that's the game the industry is in, and I think you guys are a perfect example of solving that problem for a lot of businesses. It's interesting to see what the future holds after this very transformational chapter.
Yeah, it's going to become about net operating income efficiencies. That is going to be what everyone has to focus on because supply demand will be what it is depending on the location, but making sure that you're running lean, that is absolutely pivotal.
Amazing. Dan, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me.